On June 26, 1862, in accordance with General Orders No. 103 issued by President Lincoln in the U.S. War Department, a new federal field army is formed in and around Washington, designated as the Army of Virginia. The President has grown frustrated with Major General George B. McClellan's case of the slows, as he puts it. The young Napoleon's unwillingness to re-engage the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia outside Richmond after being completely outgeneraled by Robert E. Lee in the 7 Days battles. Lincoln has organized this new army with the hopes of sending it overland towards Richmond from Northern Virginia, while McClellan's Army of the Potomac would continue to menace the Confederate capital from the peninsula. Assuming command of this new federal army is 40-year-old Major General John Pope, who had been transferred from the Western Theater by orders of President Lincoln. Pope had been one of the more aggressive army commanders in the West, having seen success on the Mississippi River at the Battle of Island No. 10 around New Madrid, Missouri, and at the Siege of Corinth in northeastern Mississippi during the Shiloh Campaign, where he is one of Henry Halleck's more aggressive field commanders. Lincoln's hope is that the aggressive John Pope will be able to spur the Eastern Theater's federal armies into action and competently lead them to victory over General Lee's army before finally capturing Richmond. The Union Army of Virginia is organized out of the old commands of Major General John C. Fremont's Mountain Department, Major General Nathaniel P. Banks' Department of the Shenandoah, and Major General Irvin McDowell's 1st Corps in the Army of the Potomac, also known as the Department of the Rappahannock. These forces, which are scattered across the northern parts of Virginia, form the nucleus of Pope's new field army. Additional reinforcements are put together from regiments made up of mostly German, Polish, Hungarian, Slavic, and other Eastern European immigrant volunteers, many of whom have come to America to start a new life for themselves away from the politics of the old world, only to be dragged into their new homeland's rapidly expanding civil conflict. These German and Eastern European volunteers in the Union Army are commanded by popular or influential leaders from their communities. Many of these prominent immigrants are former leaders or figures from the revolutions of 1848 in Europe. These men are known throughout their adopted country as 48ers. Among the 48ers in leadership roles within the Army of Virginia are notable men such as German Brunswick Army officer Otto von Steinwehr, Hungarian soldier and revolutionary Julius Stahl, German revolutionary leader Karl Schurz, former Prussian Army soldier and revolutionary Alexander Schimmelpfennig, and the Polish nobleman Władimir Krzyżanowski. Leading this colorful melting pot of Central and Eastern European immigrants is Major General Franz Sigel, a politically connected German 48er who's highly popular with the northern immigrant communities. Many of these men, some who can barely speak any English, can often be heard saying, "I goes to fight mit Sigel." General Sigel's career in the Union Army had gotten off to a bad start when his brigade was routed by Confederates at the Battle of Wilson's Creek in southwest Missouri on August 10, 1861, ultimately leading to the Federals' defeat in that early engagement. However, Sigel had managed to somewhat repair the damage done to his reputation with his gallant leadership in the Federal artillery bombardment during the second day of Battle of Pea Ridge on March 8, 1862. Many of Franz Sigel's fellow senior officers in the Army, especially nativists and former Know-Nothing Party members, despised the German revolutionary-turned-politician for his confrontational attitude and arrogance. But President Lincoln is well aware of Sigel's high popularity with European immigrants, and his role in helping sway and recruit these tired, poor, huddled masses into federal service for the war effort. And so, Sigel's ordered to Washington in the summer of 1862 to take part in the upcoming campaign against Richmond. Major General Pope organizes the Army of Virginia into 3 infantry corps, with Franz Sigel leading the 1st Corps, Nathaniel P. Banks leading the 2nd Corps, and Irvin McDowell in command of 3rd Corps. Pope, however, becomes widely unpopular with the men and officers under his command. Upon arriving in Washington, Pope issues an address to the troops under him on July 14th, where it arrogantly states, "I have come to you from the West, where you have always seen the backs of our enemies, from an army whose business it has been to seek the adversary and to beat him where he was found, whose policy has been attack and not defense. This blatant attack on the fighting spirit and courage of the common Union soldier in the East is met with anger and frustration from the troops, who do not see themselves at fault for being put under poor and incompetent leadership in the past campaigns." To make matters worse, Major General Pope also begins to experience bureaucratic troubles with his new army. Following the conclusion of McClellan's unsuccessful Peninsula Campaign on July 1st at the Battle of Malvern Hill, President Lincoln finally lost patience with the young Napoleon, and on July 8th, after personally inspecting McClellan's supply base at Harrison's Landing on the James River, ordered the Army of the Potomac commander to begin transferring his divisions off the peninsula to be recalled back to Washington, where they would rendezvous with Pope's army. Although the president promises Little Mac that he's still superior in rank to Pope, McClellan becomes incensed at the orders to recall his forces from the peninsula and give them over to this upstart general from the west. And so, McClellan begins moving his Army of the Potomac off the Virginia Peninsula back to Washington as ordered, but very slowly and with extreme caution, one division at a time, in a seemingly deliberate attempt to undermine Pope. McClellan's inability to cooperate with John Pope in the upcoming campaign brings great frustration to the latter general, who sees McClellan's slow movements and caution as an attempt to set his Army of Virginia up for failure in the new campaign against Richmond. Despite these backroom politics and feuding, Pope continues on with his planned Northern Virginia campaign. Pope's first substantive order to his Army of Virginia dictate not the movement of his troops, but the behavior of his army. He permits men under his command to requisition food from Virginia farmers. He demands oaths of loyalty from male civilians within Union lines in Virginia. He dictates that local civilians would be held liable for damage done by Confederate raiders. In the summer of 1862, these measures by Pope are seen as radical and, to some Unionists, offensive. Leading the chorus of disapproval are McClellan and his closest confidant, Fitz-John Porter, commanding the Army of the Potomac's 5th Corps as a newly promoted Major General. Porter labels Pope an ass and predicts, if the theory he proclaims is practice, you may look for disaster. General Robert E. Lee is likewise outraged at Pope's radical measures against the populace of Virginia. Lee calls Pope a miscreant, strong language indeed from the modest General Lee, and declares that he must be suppressed. The Northern Virginia campaign finally gets underway on July 19, 1862. On that day, Pope orders Sigel's 1st Corps to Sperryville, Banks' 2nd Corps to Little Washington, and Brigadier General James B. Ricketts' 2nd Division of McDowell's 3rd Corps to Waterloo Bridge, leaving Brigadier General Rufus King's 1st Division at Fredericksburg to guard the lower Rappahannock River. In preparation for a raid on the vital railroad hub of Gordonsville, where the Virginia Central Railroad connects the Confederate capital of Richmond to the Shenandoah Valley and to Tennessee, Pope orders Brigadier General Samuel W. Crawford's 1st Brigade of Alpheus S. Williams' 1st Division, 2nd Corps, south to Culpeper to support Federal cavalry massing for the raid. But when the Federals learn that Stonewall Jackson is advancing from Richmond with a force of unknown size, their mission changes abruptly from raid and reconnaissance. Pope needs information quickly about the size of Jackson's force. After the conclusion of the 7 days battles in the Peninsula Campaign in early July of 1862, General Robert E. Lee reorganizes his massive unwieldy Army of Northern Virginia into a 2-corps structure along with supporting cavalry and artillery reserve. These 2 infantry corps, which are loose and fluid organizations that Lee designates as wings of his army, are placed under the command of his 2 most trusted subordinates, Major Generals James Longstreet and Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson. Longstreet takes command of the right wing, while Jackson leads the left wing. Major General Jeb Stuart leads the Army's reorganized cavalry division, and Brigadier General William N. Pendleton commands the artillery reserve. Although Pendleton is temporarily out of action after sustaining an injury from a bucking mule on July 3rd, generals who perform poorly or below Lee's expectations during the 7 days battles, such as Major Generals John B. Magruder, Benjamin Huger, William H.C. Whiting, and Theophilus H. Holmes, are shuffled out of the Army of Northern Virginia to other posts throughout the Confederacy. When Lee realizes that McClellan is content to sit idly on the banks of the James River, on July 16th, he orders Stonewall Jackson north from Richmond with 2 divisions. His own Stonewall Division, led by Brigadier General Charles S. Winder, and Major General Richard S. Ewell's division. Jackson arrives in Gordonsville 3 days later. On July 29th, his left wing is reinforced by Major General A.P. Hill's Light Division. These reinforcements double Jackson's left wing and gives him the strength necessary to overwhelm any one of the 3 Federal Infantry Corps of the Army of Virginia, which is spread along a wide arc from Fredericksburg in the east to the Blue Ridge Mountains in the west. Jackson's situation is similar to what he had done to his foes in the Shenandoah Valley several months earlier: defeat in detail if he could strike the enemy before support could arrive. To carry out the strategy, Jackson hopes to reach Culpeper before the Federals can secure it in order to control its vital road network. His first target would be Banks, who Jackson learns from his scouts has recently been ordered to Culpeper by Pope. On August 7th, Jackson delivers orders of his own to his 3 divisions to march 8 miles from Gordonsville to the vicinity of Orange Courthouse. From there, he hopes to reach Culpeper the following day. When Federal scouts report the movement to Pope, the Union General orders Sigel's 1st Corps and the rest of Banks' 2nd Corps to converge on Culpeper. Banks arrives there on August 8th, but Sigel does not arrive until the following day. With the arrival of Hill's Light Division, Jackson has under his command in the left wing about 24,000 men organized into 3 divisions. Hill's 12,000-strong Light Division comprises 7 brigades, while Major General Richard S. Ewell's division and Jackson's division, under Charles S. Winder, have 7,000 and 4,000 men respectively. In addition, Jackson has Brigadier General Beverly Robertson's brigade of cavalry, which is 1,000 strong. The other half of Lee's army, Major General James Longstreet's right wing, has around 32,000 men organized into 5 divisions, along with an attached independent brigade of 3,700 men led by Brigadier General Nathan G. Evans. Major General Richard H. Anderson's division of 6,000 men is organized into 3 infantry brigades and a battalion of 6 artillery batteries under Colonel Stephen D. Lee. Brigadier General David R. Jones' division, 4,000 strong, has 3 infantry brigades. The 5,000 men of Brigadier General Cadmus M. Wilcox's division are organized into 3 brigades, as are the 5,000 troops of Brigadier General James L. Kemper's division. Brigadier General John Bell Hood's division of 5,000 men have 2 infantry brigades and an artillery battalion. Finally, Longstreet organizes a right-wing artillery reserve consisting of the Washington, Louisiana Artillery and various other batteries, all led by Colonel James B. Walton. The command that Stonewall Jackson leads is considerably larger than the one he had commanded in the Shenandoah Valley earlier in the year. It would prove difficult for Jackson to manage his left wing, both on the march and on the field of battle. The campaign gets off to a poor start when Jackson's famous foot cavalry manages to march only a half a dozen miles on August 8th, not the 20 miles a day for which it is noted for. Winder, who had been sick with a fever and is under orders to rest, receives Jackson's permission to return to his command for the pending battle. Little does General Jackson know, his march toward Culpeper has been under constant surveillance and observation by Union signal stations posted on Thoroughfare Mountain to the northwest of Culpeper and Mount Pony to the southeast of the town. The rising dust clouds caused by the marching feet of 24,000 soldiers is visible from these 2 signal posts, and they soon alert Banks to Jackson's imminent approach. Banks now has 3 options. He can hold his position at Culpeper, as ordered by Pope, and wait for the rest of the army to arrive to reinforce him. He can withdraw from Culpeper and regroup with Pope's army further north, thus giving up the town to Jackson's forces. Or he can launch a bold strike against Jackson's Confederates, who outnumber Banks at a 3-to-1 advantage. Banks knows that holding his position at Culpeper would give the initiative to Jackson to try and get around his flanks, as he had done 3 months earlier at the Battle of Winchester. And so, Banks boldly decides to strike Jackson's left wing, setting up his 2nd Corps in positions on a ridgeline 7 miles south of Culpeper, along a stream known as Cedar Run. The position is a sound one, but it is overshadowed by a looming 200-foot hill to the south known as Cedar Mountain, alternatively known as Slaughter's Mountain, for being a part of the property of Reverend Dr. Philip Slaughter. The name Slaughter's Mountain will soon have its meaning reinforced with the slaughter that is to come on Saturday, August 9, 1862, with the Battle of Cedar Mountain.